So person-directed care is seeing the whole person, connecting to their heart and spirit. We use the concepts of person-directed care to enhance the well-being and growth of each individual. The next definition comes from the Wisconsin Coalition for Person-Directed Care, and I really like it. It says resident-directed or person-centered care is an ongoing interactive process between residents, caregivers, and others that honor the residents' dignity and choices in directing their daily life. In a person-directed care setting where we are taking direction from the elder, we must adjust almost everything we do away from the institutional routines. This results in a new pattern or a routine every time a new elder joins us. This is Dr. Tom Kitwood, who is considered to be the father of person-centered care and of the gentle, persuasive approaches, which is a course I highly recommend. He compels us to see a behavior as the expression of an unmet need. And he says the prime task of dementia care is to maintain the personhood of the person in face of failing mental powers. So if we see behaviors as an attempt to communicate an unmet need, this is a game changer. This is a game changer. It means instead of us labeling a behavior that we think we can't do much about, we look for the unmet need and we try to meet it. So behaviors really are an expression of an unmet need. When we view people's responses as behaviors, or such as wandering, we've labeled them, and then we put an imaginary check mark in the air and we forget about it, as if nothing can be done. People with dementia struggle to communicate and often have altered responses as a result. When we see these behaviors as altered responses that are attempts to communicate an unmet need, we're compelled to look for that unmet need and try to meet it. How different it is to see an action as being a protective response as opposed to aggression. This means we must stop trying to manage and control people and try to meet their needs. We often try to manage people by using medication, and this unfortunately masks the need but leaves it unmet. How awful. This is the failing of the medical model in caring for people with dementia. Dr. Power says that when someone calls him in the middle of the night, the only thing he has at his disposal that the nurse doesn't have is a prescription pad for a medication. He has to assume that the nurse has tried everything that she possibly could. And I think what happens is that when people think in the medical model, their first line is to use drugs. This is so sad. Remember Ellen and Richard? We need a paradigm shift. We need to shift from, he's confused because he has dementia and I need to manage his behaviors, to, I don't know what he's trying to tell me and I need to identify the unmet need. So the unmet needs can be physical, environmental, and emotional. And I want to focus more on the emotional. The physical ones I think we're pretty good at. The environmental ones are tough because many of our people are living in really institutional buildings. But you can do things like get rid of all the symbols of the institution, get rid of the overhead pages, the trays, the people lined up, staff in uniforms, those kinds of things. We can make our places look more like home, and it's critically important. So we need to make the environment really straightforward so we aren't tricking people who have dementia. And I think when people are trying to leave all the time, sometimes it's because the only thing that they can move or manipulate is the handle on the door, or it could be that we have not created the feeling of home for them, and they're looking for that. So the emotional needs are often ignored because we have a view that nothing can be done because the brain's not working properly. But Dr. Richard Taylor, who is a psychologist with Alzheimer's disease, says people live more and more in their feelings. So this is where we need to focus. The first principle of the Eden alternative actually does focus us here. It says the 3 plagues of loneliness, helplessness, and boredom account for the bulk of suffering among our elders. These are plagues of the spirit or their unmet emotional needs. Interestingly enough, the Eden alternative was first created for people with dementia. People with dementia suffer the most from the plagues. These, well, Dr. Gillette didn't show us a picture of mirror neurons, but this isn't really what they look like. These represent mirror neurons. And mirror neurons are responsible for our empathy. Have you ever been with somebody who cried and you started crying? Or somebody sneezed, you sneezed, somebody yawned, you yawned? These are your mirror neurons, and they are still intact for people with dementia. And because people with dementia live more and more in their feelings, this is really important. Empathy is the basis of good dementia care. So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. It's not just what you do, but how you do it. And what you think is what you show. So as Dr. Taylor teaches us, people with dementia live more and more in their feelings. So it turns out when your mother said, "Get that look off your face," she was on to something. Because people with dementia pick up your feelings and your attitude so quickly. And there's a wonderful video called The Science of Happiness, and I have a reference to it at the end, by Sean Aker. And he talks about how when we are happy, we perform so much better. So we need to keep this in mind for people with dementia. So here are the unmet emotional needs. To have loving companionship, or as Dr. Thomas in the Eden Alternative talks about loneliness. To give and receive care, and we talk about helplessness. And Jessie Mantle, the clinical nurse specialist I worked with from BC when I was a student, said, "The helping hand strikes again." To have meaning and purpose. All of us need a purpose. And it can be as simple as, I used to say things to my mom like, "Thank you so much for spending time with me. It has helped me so much." And she'd say, "Oh, you're welcome, dear." And she felt that she had an important purpose. And so that was so easy to say to her. And then to feel good about yourself, to have your self-esteem boosted. I would always tell my mom, "You look wonderful today. You just look so pretty," and she would smile. And then to have control, autonomy, and choices. People who don't have control, fights break out. And so we need to give choices, and we need to take direction from the elders. So we'll talk more about those in a minute. These are spirit lifters. And these are the things we really encourage you to focus on with people with dementia, because they create happiness. Simple pleasures like having your special cup of coffee, or we talked about somebody at Sherbrooke who loved sardines and blue cheese. Yuck. But for that person, that was a simple pleasure. So finding out what a simple pleasure is for every elder you care for. Being in loving relationships with your elders, actually telling the staff, fall in love, give love, be in love. Let's talk person to person. Compliments and positive affirmations, just like, "You look so beautiful in that blue shirt." It's really wonderful. And then music, and I know we're focusing on music today, which is music to my ears, because I think it is just so incredibly powerful. And I'm excited that you're watching Alive Inside later today, because it's so great. Children, pets, plants, gardens, all those things that are important to people. My mom was a teacher, and her face would just light up the minute that the kids from the daycare came in, and she would perform so much better because she was happy. And then accomplishments, giving people tasks that they can actually complete, rather than just sitting vacantly at a table with nothing to do. Things like painting, sculpting, knitting, baking, cleaning, sorting. Any of these things that people are happy to do are really powerful. So we need to put energy into these things in order to create well-being. So you can all imagine, if these are the spirit lifters, what the spirit breakers are. Things like arguing, correcting, treating in a childlike fashion, forcing treatment, not giving choices, ignoring, talking over somebody, listening to a TV drone on and on when you can't understand, listening to music that you hate, being drugged so you can't express yourself, being labeled a hoarder, or being labeled somebody's task. She's a feed. These are just incredibly dehumanizing things, and they have no place in the care of anybody, let alone people with dementia. So all of these are dehumanizing. So Sean Aker in the happiness study showed that when people are happier, they perform much better. So when we create joy for people with dementia, they perform better and learn better. We can actually help them improve by changing our approach in creating joy. So words make worlds, and they're so powerful. We've already talked about how they influence our thoughts and actions, but the whole idea of labels it just is wrong. You label somebody and you say it's just that way, there's nothing we can do. In fact, that the act of labeling it is we think that's our action. But so words can be so harmful, but they can be so powerful as well. So here's some powerful phrases, and these are some tips I'm leaving you with today that you can use. These are related to how they make us feel. And so saying to somebody, "It's wonderful to see you." This phrase actually works, and the person's face lights up, and they smile, and they make a connection with us. So I remember walking into the house where my mom lived, and there was a realtor there. His name is Ron. And I'd say to Ron, "It's wonderful to see you." And Ron would look at me and he'd say, "We haven't seen each other in a long time, have we?" Because he didn't remember me. And I'd say, "No, we haven't. That's why it's so wonderful to see you." And he'd say, "Well, it's wonderful to see you too." So a phrase like that, "What if I give you a hand," is another powerful one. This is something a friend would say to you rather than, "I want to give you a bath." What if I give you a hand? What if I asked you, "Can I help you freshen up?" rather than saying you need to get washed and ready for the day. Things like "may I invite you" get at our need for belonging, and they're powerful. It's sort of like you remember being a little kid and you were invited to the party and you were included. And then "we're going to have so much fun." Then there are the nevers. Never correct, never quiz, never argue, never treat in a childlike fashion. These are all disrespectful things to do, and these lead to fights with our elders. We just need to come and reapproach another time in a really positive way. So, in summary, my 3 key messages are: the medical institutional model of care that is common in long-term care is the wrong model for helping people with dementia or for any other people who have to live in a care home. It's soul destroying. A person-directed model of care, like the Eden Alternative, is a more appropriate model as it creates joy and well-being and growth. And there are many successful approaches that can be used in that model that don't seem to be appropriate or acceptable in the medical model. And so the approach is by using the neuro-linguistic programming, "it's wonderful to see you," and waiting for care, adjusting our routines. Those kinds of things don't work in the medical model. So I encourage you to shift models, and it is hard work. So in summary, we're in the wrong model of care. This is a big slide, but I wanted just to leave you with a summary slide. Our role in an elder-centered model is to create well-being, joy, and success. Dementia is a shift in the way people experience the world around them. And we must shift our thinkings from behaviors to the expression of unmet needs and try to meet the needs. Remember, the look on your face matters. Empathy is the basis of all communication. Remember the mirror neurons. And use words that spark good feelings. And then never do the nevers. So as Dr. Powers says, we must change our minds about people whose minds have changed. And this is my mom. This is what Dr. Thomas says. He says, the elders are here to teach us. And when she became very confused, she taught me how creative I was, how loving I was, how respectful I was. So she taught me to open my mind and my heart, and I encourage you to do the same with people with dementia and learn from them.